It's 11 p.m., the power's been out for 6 hours, your kids are hungry, the refrigerator is warming up, and you're standing in your kitchen doing the math. 3 cans of soup, a box of pasta, half a jar of peanut butter. That's it. That's all you've got. But just 3 streets over, there's a family, a Mormon family, and they haven't had to worry about this problem in 20 years. Not because they're rich and not because they have some high-tech bunker. It's because they have a system. It's a system so reliable and so deeply practiced that it gets passed down to their children the way other families pass down recipes. Today, you're going to learn exactly what's in that pantry. 9 specific items, the exact quantities, the methods, and one item at the very end of this list that most Americans have never even heard of, but that Mormon families have been using for decades to make food last for 30 years. Stay with me, because that last item changes everything. Mormon communities have been practicing family preparedness for over 100 years. Now, this isn't some fringe prepper culture. There are 17 million of them across 170 countries. And for generations, they've been quietly, systematically building home food storage as a way of life, not just a hobby. They've actually tested these methods through droughts, recessions, and major supply chain collapses. They've refined the quantities and they've passed down the techniques. Unlike most of the prepper advice you see floating around online, this system has been stress tested by real families in real emergencies, decade after decade. Everything you're about to hear is drawn directly from that tradition, from documented practices inside Mormon households that have kept families fed while the rest of the neighborhood was scrambling. And look, you don't have to share their faith to use their system. These are just practical, real-world tools built for real life. Before we go through the list, I want to tell you about the last item, without telling you what it is. It's something you can hold in the palm of your hand. It costs almost nothing. Mormon communities have been sourcing it in bulk for decades. And when combined with white rice and the right container, it does something that food scientists have confirmed. It extends shelf life to 30 years. Most American households have never seen one. Most preppers don't know to use them correctly. I'll show you exactly what it is and how to use it at the end of this list. Don't skip ahead. The context matters. Item 1, salt. For generations, Mormon families have kept salt as one of 4 absolute foundation items, the non-negotiables that go into storage before anything else. They don't store it in a standard cardboard cylinder either. They store it in 25-pound food-grade buckets, bulk iodized salt, sealed tight against moisture, sitting on a shelf where it won't be disturbed. The quantity that Mormon households have traditionally aimed for is 8 pounds of salt per person per year. That means a family of 4 keeps 32 pounds on hand, minimum. Think about it. The average American kitchen has 1 small canister of salt, maybe a pound, maybe less. In a crisis, that runs out within days. But salt preserves food. It regulates your body chemistry. Honestly, without it, your body physically breaks down. And in a grid down scenario, it becomes one of the most valuable items you could possibly have to trade. 8 pounds per person. A sealed container. Done. Item 2, white rice. Not brown rice, not mixed grain. White rice specifically. And here's why this matters. Brown rice has natural oils in the bran layer. Over time, those oils go rancid. Because of that, brown rice has a shelf life of only 6 to 12 months. But white rice, stored correctly, it lasts for 25 years. Mormon families have known this for generations. They buy white long-grain rice by the 50-pound sack and seal it right at home. The quantity they've traditionally aimed for is roughly 25 pounds of grain per person per month as the absolute base of a long-term food supply. And rice is the backbone of that number. And when you combine it with the item at the very end of this list, that shelf life extends even further. See, most American families treat rice as a side dish, and they just buy a small 2-pound bag when they need it. Mormon families buy it by the 50-pound sack. So, buy long grain white rice in bulk. It's cheap, it's calorie dense, and it stores longer than almost anything else in your kitchen. Item 3. Honey. 60 pounds of honey per person. That's the exact quantity Mormon households have traditionally kept in long-term storage. And before you write that off as excessive, consider what honey actually is. Honey is one of the only foods on Earth that literally does not expire. Archaeologists have actually found 3,000-year-old honey in Egyptian tombs, and it was still perfectly edible. The chemistry behind it, its low moisture content, high acidity, and natural hydrogen peroxide production, makes it completely inhospitable to bacteria. Mormon families use honey as a sugar substitute, a natural preservative, a sweetener for stored grain dishes, and even as a medicinal staple. See, applying honey to wounds has documented antibacterial properties. In a scenario where medical care is limited, that really matters. Meanwhile, the average American home has one small 12-ounce squeeze bear of honey. You know, the kind with that crystallized gunk stuck around the nozzle. So, buy raw honey in bulk, store it in sealed glass or food-grade plastic. It will quite literally outlast everything else in your pantry. Item 4. Bar soap. Most prepper lists start and end with food and water. But Mormon households go a step further, because they've learned over generations of practicing emergency preparedness that hygiene is exactly where most families fall apart. Bar soap has been a core part of the Mormon emergency kit tradition for as long as the practice has existed. Think about it. Not just food, not just water, but hygiene. Specifically, see, in a major crisis, sanitation collapses fast. Without running water, people stop washing their hands. When that happens, gastrointestinal illness, the very thing most likely to send your family to the ER after a disaster, spreads instantly. Hospitals saw it happen after Hurricane Katrina, and they see it after every prolonged grid-down event. The thing is, a bar of soap weighs almost nothing, costs next to nothing, and stores indefinitely in a cool, dry place. That's why Mormon households stock it by the dozen, ensuring they have enough to maintain clean, sanitary conditions for weeks without needing a trip to the store. So, stock up on bar soap the exact same way you stock your food. Buy it by the box, not by the bar. Item 5. White vinegar. White distilled vinegar has been a staple of Mormon home preparedness for generations, used for cooking, food preservation, and household sanitation all at once. The incredible thing about distilled white vinegar is that it has an indefinite shelf life. Its high acidity completely prevents bacterial growth, which keeps it stable essentially forever. In fact, food scientists have confirmed that it doesn't meaningfully degrade over time. Mormon families rely on vinegar for home canning. It's absolutely required for safe pickling and for preserving low-acid vegetables. They also use it for deep cleaning and sanitizing surfaces, and they use it in everyday recipes when fresh ingredients aren't around. Now, the average American only uses vinegar occasionally for a salad dressing, keeping just one lonely bottle under the sink. But a gallon of distilled white vinegar costs less than $3 and lasts for decades. That's why Mormon households stock it by the case. Honestly, it's one of the most versatile, hardworking items in the entire storage tradition. Item 6. Baking soda. Mormon families have kept baking soda as a core kitchen staple in their food storage for generations. And not just for baking, but for everything else baking soda can do that most people never even think about. First off, it's a leavening agent. When you're living off stored flour and rice, the simple ability to make bread rise becomes a massive deal, both for family morale and for actual nutrition. Mormon families who bake regularly as part of their household routine already know exactly how to make it work beautifully with stored goods. But beyond cooking, baking soda is an incredible cleaning agent, a powerful deodorizer, a mild antiseptic for minor wounds and insect stings, and even a reliable fire suppressant for small grease fires. The best part? 1 pound costs less than $2 and it will store indefinitely as long as it's kept sealed and dry. So, stock it by the pound, not by the little box. Standard grocery boxes contain just over 12 ounces, which goes fast. Instead, buy the 5-pound bags and seal them up tight. Item 7. Canning lids. Home canning is one of the oldest threads in the Mormon family tradition, a practice that goes all the way back through World War II and even further to a time when preserving your own food wasn't a hobby, but a literal necessity. Mormon households have kept canning equipment stocked across generations, and the one specific item they stock that most people completely forget about is lids. Not the jars and not the rings. Just the lids. See, the jars can last forever. The lids absolutely do not. Standard canning lids, that flat metal disc part of a two-piece lid system, are strictly single use. The sealing compound around the edge breaks down after just one use, meaning it cannot reliably reseal. If you try to do any canning without a fresh supply of new lids, you're risking total food spoilage, or honestly, something even worse, like botulism. That's why Mormon households stock these lids in massive quantities, cases of them. Ball and Kerr are the standard trusted brands out there, and they're available in both regular and wide mouth sizes. A case of 12 lids usually costs around $10. So, stock up on cases, not just individual boxes, and make sure you're buying the flat lids, not just the rings. Remember, the ring can be reused, but that flat lid cannot. Item 8. Wool blankets. Mormon emergency preparedness has always included warm bedding as an absolute non-negotiable. And we're not talking about synthetic or decorative blankets here. We mean wool, specifically. Here's what wool does that synthetic blankets just can't. It actually retains warmth even when it's wet. See, a wet fleece blanket loses almost all of its insulating value. But a wet wool blanket? It still retains roughly 80% of its ability to keep you warm. In a winter power outage, a severe flood, or any scenario where you're forced to manage temperatures without a heating system, that single difference is massive. It's truly the line between staying safe and facing real danger, especially for young children and elderly family members. On top of that, wool blankets are naturally fire-resistant, antimicrobial, and they will easily last for decades with just basic care. Now, the average American household relies entirely on synthetic comforters, which are great when they're dry, but completely useless when they're wet, because they were purchased for aesthetics, not actual function. You don't need to spend a fortune either. Military surplus wool blankets are widely available for $15 to $30, and they perform identically to the premium versions. You'll want to keep at least one per person, minimum. Item 9. Oxygen absorbers. This is it. This is the exact item Mormon families have been using for decades that most Americans have never even encountered. An oxygen absorber is just a small packet, roughly the size of a sugar packet, filled with iron powder. When you seal it inside an airtight container with your food, it absorbs all the oxygen inside that container. It literally pulls the oxygen levels down from the normal 21% all the way to below 0.1%. White rice stored inside a sealed Mylar bag or a food-grade bucket with an oxygen absorber will last for 30 years. That's not just marketing hype. That's documented food science. The United States Department of Agriculture has actually confirmed this shelf life data for oxygen-sealed grain storage, and Mormon communities have proven it in practice across multiple generations. The method is incredibly simple. Take your white rice, put it in a food-grade Mylar bag, add one oxygen absorber sized for that container, heat seal it shut, and place that bag inside a 5-gallon food-grade bucket with a Gamma Seal lid. That container of rice, right there, will literally outlast your mortgage. Here's what really strikes me about everything you just heard. None of it is exotic. Salt, rice, honey, soap, vinegar, baking soda, lids, blankets, and a small packet of iron powder. These aren't survival gadgets. They're not tactical gear, and they're definitely not expensive. Honestly, they're the exact kinds of things that every American family stored as a matter of course before 1960. See, Mormon families didn't invent preparedness. They just never stopped practicing it. When the rest of the country handed that responsibility off to supply chains and big supermarkets, they kept the tradition going, quietly, methodically, across generations. I want to ask you just one question before you go. Of the 9 items on this list, which specific one are you actually adding to your storage this week? Not someday, this week. Go ahead and leave it in the comments below. And in the very next video, I'm going to show you what Mormon families call the 3-month supply. It's a specific step-by-step plan for building a complete family food reserve, starting entirely from scratch, using only what you can find at a regular grocery store. No special equipment, no bulk buying accounts, just a system that works. I'll see you there.